There's nothing like a wedding to create a feeling of happiness, bliss, and romance. That is, unless an entitled person gets involved. This woman gets frustrated when her wedding turns sour, as entitled grandparents stir up family infighting and drive a wedge between different family members. After being humiliated by their manager, this waiter decides to do their job exactly as requested. Funnily enough, it's the manager who ends up paying the price in the end. These hospital workers are just doing their job when their boss, a Karen, starts to get overbearing and controlling. What does Karen want, and what hilarious compliance do they do in response? You'll only find out by watching this episode of VoiceyHere's Entitled Parents, featuring malicious compliance. This story was called Entitled Grandparents Decided to Choose Between Grandkids. I got married last year, but a year before that, me and my now wife settled on a venue, and then started the process of whittling down guests. We had a ceremony capacity of 80. I come from quite a large family, with few friends. She has a small family, but lots of friends. Mostly we share her group of friends. However, this did lead to us making a couple of rules. Number 1, only inviting family members to the day part of the wedding we had both actually seen during our 5-year relationship. No random cousins or uncles who never enter our lives. Number 2, no one below 16. We came to our own conclusion, rightly or wrongly, that we would rather have more adults there who are more likely to enjoy the day, instead of kids who may not. Also, if we invited all the kids in the family, it would be a quarter of our capacity. So when we got engaged, my grandparents, only ones I have left on my side, were very happy and immediately told me to invite who we wanted and to sod everyone else. Do what we want. Once we made the decision regarding venue, the decision around the inviting children followed pretty much after. This is where the drama begins. I'm the oldest grandchild to their oldest son. They had 3 sons, my dad and my 2 uncles. My dad and his oldest brother all have kids over 16. Youngest brother, however, has 4, all under 11. This uncle and aunt tend to use my grandparents a lot as extra childcare and support, which is fine. However, it had led to this situation where they are regarded as their babies and need extra attention. However, the choice we made led to my grandparents immediately saying they won't come to the wedding if they aren't invited. This took all of us, my parents included, by surprise, especially as we heard the auntie and uncle affected were fine with it. However, my grandparents strong-armed them into agreeing with their position. This led to my dad having a conversation with the grandparents to try and make them see sense. I never got the details. All I know is that it ended with my dad leaving the house after telling my grandmother that the word stubborn would be set on her grave, and he's usually a very controlled individual. 2 days later, my sister, 21 at the time, dropped by theirs to say hello. She was there chatting normally, and my grandma just cuts in and goes, "So then, what do you have to say about it all?" This took her aback, but she defended our position. My grandma argued that we were picking on them and always believed we were better than that family. She also said she wanted a nice picture of all the grandkids together. My sister asked her how she could be choosing between the grandkids. Doesn't she love us all the same? She didn't respond for a few seconds, before eventually saying, "Well, they are younger. They are our babies." My sister left in tears. I felt terrible and responsible for the fallout. My dad talked me out of going around and having it out with them. He said leave it and we will see if they come around. Time passes and I'm delivering invites to relatives. I was also rushing to meet a friend, so it was very much in and out of houses. I arrived at their house and only remembered the situation as I walked in. I handed them the invite and was immediately told they would not be attending. I was stunned into silence. I told them the decision wasn't personal and all kids were welcome for the evening party. They told me it wasn't fair and it should be everyone or they won't come at all. I finally crack and shout at them. I state I didn't realize my grandparents' attendance was conditional. They reply with, "How do you think this makes us feel?" I blurt out, "How do you feel? My grandparents aren't coming to my freaking wedding." They ask me to leave. I walk to the door, turn around, walk back, grab the invite. I say, "You won't be needing this," and leave. I haven't seen them since. On a plus note, the wedding was amazing. The additional friends we invited really made it a party atmosphere, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I've decided it was their loss, and it's something they will have to live with. Planning a wedding is stressful enough. This couple to then have some entitled grandparents, thinking that they could run things their way, would only make things even more stressful. That's the tricky thing when it comes to family members like this. They forget that it's not their day and it's not about them and what they want. And if that's the way they're going to treat their grandchildren, you can understand why he took the invitations back. This fan-submitted story was called "Dance Mum Gets Put in Her Place by My 15-Year-Old Savior." I've been a dancer since I was 3. I was an only child for 9 years and was obviously social, but no friends. The best solution was activities, and I apparently jumped for joy at the thought of ballet classes. A little background. I lived in a smallish town in Kansas. It managed to have 2 studios, somehow, but most kids went to mine. It was the most prestigious of the 2. I'm not bragging by any means, far from it actually. My family wasn't exactly poor, but they worked super hard to pay for classes, leotards, and recital costumes. A disproportionate amount of my classmates, however, were doctors and lawyers' kids. So I hope you can imagine the amount of entitlement that runs rampant. Okay, so story time. My studio was ramping up for recital. I was 8 or 9 if I remember right. This is close to 20 years ago, forgive me. They split the large group into a few smaller groups for partner routines. I was in one, but by watching other ones over and over, I grasped the choreography. Boring I know, but it's important I swear. One little boy, maybe 5, was crying because his partner was out sick and felt embarrassed, so his mum asked if I could stand in. Of course, I don't want to see him cry. All goes well. Boy feels better and we hug. Next routine starts practicing and I notice another boy alone. Similar situation. Riding out on my last good deed, I offer to help him, as I know the routine. He thanks me and we get in places. In the story is me, the dance mum, and Chasley, the hero of this story. Enter the dance mum. Yes, a doctor's wife. I was half friends with her daughter, who was in the routine. But the entitled apple doesn't fall far from the entitled tree. So arm's distance friends. I don't gel well with those types. Dance mum barges onto the floor mid-routine as I'm helping this boy, separates us and points her finger in my face.
"You're not in this number, what are you doing?"
Well, I just thought I would help him because his part...
"Did the dance teacher tell you you could do that?" "I didn't think so. I'm sure he can handle himself. Now go sit down by the mirror."
I ran out bawling. A 40-something-year-old woman yelling at an 8-year-old doesn't generally go well. I was intercepted by one of my favorite older dancers, Chasley. Older to me at the time meant 15. "Honey, honey, honey, what's wrong? What happened?" I explained the whole story as best I could through sniffling and snot. Oh, Chaz saw red. She shook it off for a second and hugged me for a long while. "Don't worry, honey. I'm gonna take care of it." And off she went to B studio. I followed. I may be paraphrasing, with the 20 years between and all, but basically, "Excuse me, dance mom.
Why are you shouting?"
There's a little girl out there in tears because of you. Do you want to explain why?" She was slightly stuttering.
"Well, she wasn't technically in the routine."
"Yeah, and was trying to be nice and help that boy out in a partner dance. What a horrible girl. So horrible you had to yell at her and embarrass her in front of all of her friends."
"I didn't exactly yell."
"Then why is she out there crying her eyes out? I suggest you go out there and apologize. You are supposed to be the grown-up." Chasley stormed out, but not before giving me a light forehead kiss. Dance Mom did apologize, but even as a kid, I could tell it wasn't sincere. It was so the other dance moms wouldn't think she was a monster. Chasley did get in trouble, but not a terrible amount. Basically a stern talking to. I apologized when I found out. She pinched my cheek and told me not to worry, followed by a wink. I've been trying to find Chasley for 15 years now, asking people she knew. Facebook stalking, the works. No dice. I just want to let her know I plan on naming my daughter Chasley if I'm bestowed a girl. Chaz, if you're out there, I will never in my life forget what you did for me. If you're her, I know you'll remember this, or at least I hope so. Feel free to bother me. One of the easiest minorities to forget about is children. Often adults can get away with treating children like crap because, well, they're just kids. And it's easy to forget how we were treated when we were children ourselves. This story was called Separate and Label Each Seat, Even If It's on One Check. You got it. I'm a student, and I took some time off to focus on my studies. I found myself in a pinch and needing some cash, so I looked for a very quick serving job close to my apartment. I found one at a pretty low volume mom and pop pizza place. The manager was your typical bully, who liked to let everyone know she was the one in charge, and loved to get on someone's case. If they didn't put the pepper shaker back on the table in the right position, any small thing she had the opportunity to reprimand someone for, she took it. She also loved to humiliate people. I was new, and instantly the staff really seemed to like me. I was overall usually in a good mood, and had a lot of inside jokes with most of the staff. The checks, tabs for the tables, were handwritten, so I liked to abbreviate things to make the process quicker. If things were on one check, I didn't feel a need to separate seats, as they were going on one check anyways, so why should it matter? As the checks are handwritten, the cashier was the manager, and they were in charge of ringing up the receipts and totals of the check on the one register. I had a table of 3 on one check, so I wrote it on one piece of paper, all under one seat. She calls me over, loudly in front of the whole staff to embarrass me. I'll be X and she will be EL for entitled loser.
Hey X, what have I told you about separate seats?
Oh, they're on one check.
Okay, well, all seats need to be separate.
Even if they're on one check? Seems kind of like a waste of time since it's handwritten and all.
Yes, I need to know. Each seat, separate. It's not that difficult.
So for the rest of the day, she would patronize me and clap each time I would separate every 2 top table I had. At the end of one shift, a cook could see how crappy she was treating me. He pulled me in the back and said, "Hey, I think you did a great job today. You killed it." He was so genuine. I left the back smiling. 10 minutes later, she told me she needed to talk to me. I was assuming she was going to tell me I did a great job separating checks. Nope. She said the tables looked like crap, and I need to put the napkins on the right side of the tables, not the left. I had had it. The next day, I was the closing server. I was alone, just me, her, and the kitchen. Super slow night. Then we had a large party come in. It was 14 people. No problem. The entire restaurant was empty, and I was the only server. I got their orders, then took a seat. As they were eating, I took my sweet time separating each single order by hand. I made sure to use my very best handwriting, spelling out each individual word. No shorthand tonight. 20 minutes after close, they still hadn't asked for their checks. I was in no rush that night, but my manager was.
Can I get the checks please? I'm ready to go.
Sure, no problem. I approached the table. Hey guys, we're wrapping up. No rush, but I have your checks. I separated them all. Are you all separate or on one? Oh, put us on one. Now at this point, I could have just stapled all 14 checks together and asked for the calculated total, and asked the manager to simply type the total plus tax. But since she was so hell-bent on separate checks, I delivered 14 separate checks for her to calculate up herself.
Oh, separate? Seriously?
Yep. It took her about 5 minutes to calculate it. After gathering them up, I add the separate totals, staple them, and circle the total. I hand the check over and let them hang out for another 15 minutes before handing over a payment. I go and swipe the card and tell them to have a good night. The manager/cashier is in charge of closing out the final payments. She sees it's on one check.
That was on one check? Seriously?
I know, they changed their mind. It would have been so much easier for me to have just put it on the one piece of paper, huh? The death glare she gave me was priceless. I cleaned the table off with a grin on my face. I quit 2 weeks later. Shove those separate checks up your butt, Catherine. Many people are just happy to do their job. Just do what they're told and they don't really mind in what way they have to do it. I much prefer trying to find any way to improve efficiency if I can. So bosses or managers that refuse to listen, even when it can make everything done better, that can be the most frustrating thing at a job. Let me know if you've got any stories where you had a great idea for your workplace but just weren't listened to. This story was called Operation Undershirts, a dress code policy strictly enforced and hilariously complied with. So in my early 20s, 21, I start working as a phlebotomist. I drew blood in a large hospital. I had just moved and knew no one, and also just didn't know the area or city. I worked evening shift, 1300 to 2130. After completing the training, I was put on my normal shift with my fellow workers, who, to my surprise, were all my age or younger. We became fast friends. Great peeps. Fast forward a year. Our shift is the busiest shift for stat draws and traumas in ER. The pace is tough, but we're great friends, and we handle it and help each other out a lot. All the hospital staff, for the most part, know us and love us for our hard work and professionalism. Our boss, let's call her Karen, solely works day shifts and has no idea really what it's like on our shift. She loves to nitpick about silly things, and she doesn't feel like she is accomplishing anything unless she is telling you where you're wrong and how you can improve. Our shift is 3 guys and 1 girl. We all dress in scrubs and a t-shirt underneath. We usually wear any kind of t-shirt, as long as you can only see a solid color and it matches or looks okay. Karen one day notices and reminds us all that the handbook specifically says that our undershirts have to be white, and that with colored undershirts we are very unprofessional. I make a remark about all the crazy colored prints graphics on the scrub tops on day shift, who are all female, and how I don't think having our undershirts are any more unprofessional than a SpongeBob scrub top. She explicitly says that they are permitted in the handbook, but our undershirts were not, and we better fix it as soon as possible, and the next person to show up to work without a white undershirt will be sent home to change. So later that night, I have a solid idea, and propose it to my awesome evening shift cohort. Let's all go out and buy white undershirts, along with the most outrageous and ridiculous scrub tops we can find. My idea is praised, and we all go shopping after work. The next day we meet in the parking lot and all walk in together. My buddy Jonas is sporting a black scrub top covered in vivid red smooching lips. Will is looking very professional in a white top with strawberry shortcake cartoon images all over. And I'm wearing a baby blue and pink Dora the Explorer scrub top, all with white undershirts. We walk in, and there's lots of laughing and yelling, and we draw a crowd in the lab. In walks Karen. Her face turns red as we proudly display our commitment to professionalism and our 100% handbook dress code compliant outfits. She mutters a thank you and scurries off to consult the director, who is awesome. The director laughed and said, "Well, you won, Karen. They're compliant." We became famous all across the hospital for our malicious compliance, and occasionally wore our fun scrubs to work for the rest of our time together. Great times. Now that's the kind of people you want to work with. Obviously not like Karen, unless you want to get on someone's nerves. But I mean, what can Karen do? They did exactly as they were supposed to do. Honestly, I'm not even sure where you would buy scrubs, let alone themed ones. So if anyone knows, let me know. If you'd like your story to be narrated by me, don't forget to visit the subreddit r/VoiceyHere, link below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Alright, I'll see you in the next one.
You're not in this number. What are you doing?